Hi, I'm Dr. Chad Larson. Thanks for joining me at the beach again. There's an interesting study that I came across that I wanted to share in my eagerness to really thoroughly understand metabolic syndrome so I can help as many patients as I can with this super important condition. I came across a really interesting study that I wanted to share with you. So basically they took two different groups of subjects, all with metabolic syndrome, which remember, metabolic syndrome is high glucose, high triglycerides, high blood pressure, a waist circumference that's above 40 in men and 35 in women, and low HDL cholesterol. And so all you have to have is 3 out of the 5 of those to be considered to have metabolic syndrome. And so what they did something very simple. They gave the two different groups of subjects the same calories. It was a low calorie diet, 1,500 calories. But what they did different was one group was a low carb diet and the other group was a low fat diet. And they basically evaluated all those markers of metabolic syndrome plus a few other markers that just also are kind of like risk factors for cardiometabolic issues. And they put them through this 12-week diet, either the low carb group or the high fat or the low fat group. They both actually had some decreases in components of metabolism. They both had improvements, but there are some really stark differences that the low carb group had as kind of extra benefit, and they're really key. And those are the things that I want to mention. This is a really well done study that was published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal called Lipids, and it was with researchers out of Ohio State University. And basically what they found was that there was a really significant decrease in fasting glucose. It dropped by 12% compared to the low fat diet. They had a significant decrease in insulin, which if you've been listening for a while, you know that I heavily pick on insulin, especially with metabolic syndrome. And there's a significant decrease, 50% decrease in insulin. There's a 10% decrease in weight in the low carbohydrate group, and there was a really significant difference in markers of lipogenesis. Lipogenesis is basically fat formation. People who were on the low carb diet had a significant decrease in fat formation, and this is despite the low carb group consuming 300% more saturated fat. Because the paradigm has been for years that the more saturated fat you consume, the more atherogenic or heart disease forming that that person is going to have, the greater risk factors they're going to have for cardiometabolic issues, because it's going to like clog up the arteries. But it actually showed the exact opposite in the study. Even though they consumed 300% more saturated fat, they had a significant decrease in those cardiometabolic risk factors. So we just have to stick with the science when we're really trying to answer the question of what type of diet is most indicated in these conditions of cardiometabolic illness, which is what we know metabolic syndrome is. If you have just 3 out of the 5 of these, then you have a significantly increased chance of developing heart disease, stroke, diabetes, obesity, and then some even other conditions like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, Alzheimer, certain types of cancer. It's major. Metabolic syndrome is a really significant set of criteria that really raise a person's risk factor for developing these really serious conditions. So we've talked about two things in the recent past. We talked about a study out of the Salk Institute, Sachin Panda and his group that studied time-restricted eating, and they found that if you have a time-restricted eating schedule of 10 hours per day, in other words, an overnight fasted period of 14 hours, and then you consume all of your calories within a 10-hour window, there was also a really significant decrease in these cardiometabolic risk factors of metabolic syndrome. So what about if you put both those two things together? The study that I just reported on, which had the kind of low carb component, and then the other group, which remember in the other one out of the Salk Institute, they didn't do anything with changing any kind of dietary calories whatsoever. They didn't ask them to change their macronutrient levels. They didn't make any changes in that regard. All they did is restrict the timing of when they ate. So imagine combining both of those concepts together, having a time-restricted eating along with following a low-carb, medium-protein, higher-fat diet, and imagine the results. This is what I've been doing clinically now for some time, and the results are great. So it's something that I just want to keep promoting, getting that out there, because metabolic syndrome is such an increasing problem and a major risk factor for most of the conditions that are killing people at kind of the greatest percentage. So hopefully that helps. This is something that you can start applying to your life right away. So I hope you do, hope it works. I'll keep reading the studies and bringing you the information. Until then, keep it real. Enjoy the view.